Hey everybody. So on the bench here today I've got this I guess a 1964, 1963 maybe, Standel 33J12T. So what's particularly cool about this amp, before we get into all the specifics, is that it seems to probably be one of the earliest ones. So it even says prototype here. I've worked on a 32J, and it's kind of cool. The chassis on this side says 32J12. So like it was originally intended to be a 32J, and then it became the prototype for their 33, and apparently their prototype chassis made it into production. The biggest difference is that the 33s implement this tag board here, as opposed to being built on terminal strips and point to point. Otherwise, it seems to be the same circuit. This amp, on the other hand, has a lot to be desired, especially considering its potential prototype status. So yeah, I think the most obvious thing we can see is that the modules are no longer with us and have been replaced with op-amp circuits. So we have an op-amp preamp here, TL072, another one over here. Judging from the component tree, at least on this one, probably have a buffer. One half of that's a buffer, the other half might be the amp. But on this one here, that's a single stage, so it's a 741, so no buffer. And then they've got a tremolo circuit using a TL072 and a Vactrol. I don't know when the work was done, but judging by these replaced pots, these are alpha pots that have Mouser stamped into the back, the part supplier. So I'm going to say those have not been around for a hot minute, so this work might date to the late 90s, early 2000s at the latest. Yeah. Everything else is relatively original. I mean, there's been some modifications in the power supply to accommodate what's ever going on here. Some sort of a rectifier circuit here for these guys. Yeah, everything else looks mostly the same. So the game plan with this, after speaking with the customer, is to return it to its glory, whatever it would have been fresh out the factory. So that means I'm going to replace these with the correct replacement modules that I make. I'll have to replace the pots as well. Luckily, that guy can stay. That's the speed and depth control for the trim circuit, and it's always I think it's a 1K speed pot, then like a 50K depth pot, and like getting that combo is not exactly easy today. So the fact that it's still there is super great. This will get all the other standard things that an old tube amp needs. So that's going to be recapping. Down here, I don't even think that's supposed to be there. Looking at this, I don't know. It might be. I can't remember. But then we've got these two guys here. These are these 100 at 350, and they're used in the voltage doubler circuit. One thing that's incredibly important is that this cap is supposed to have a cardboard sleeve because its ground is at potential, or its negative lead is at a couple hundred volts, and like you can even see where something had arced against it at some point. So yeah, that should have a sleeve on it to protect from shock. And then this guy, it's negative lead is grounded, so it's okay. And got a multi-stage cap here. So all those will get replaced. The low voltage supply over here, all of these will get replaced. And I'll rebuild the power supply in its entirety. Just like you would say, like in a fender, you need to replace those dropping resistors typically, because they have usually gone out of spec to some degree. And putting, modern metal oxide will go a long way for power supply stability. But yeah, this does use the famous voltage doubler circuit that most of these Standel hybrids used, which is really kind of cool. It allows for the use of a smaller power transformer, because the amp uses overall very little current. The only filaments that it's powering are the two 7591s and then the 12AX7 phase inverter. The modules on the front end draw minimal current. And so, yeah, allows for the smaller, cheaper, which seems to always have been Bob Crooks' motivation sometimes, which, why would it not be? Yeah, overall, an extremely cool amp. There's the faceplate. These are the early ones. It's like a sticker, like a metal sticker. So you have to be very careful with that and not let tools bump up against it and stuff like that. Trying to think anything else. Yeah, we'll do a 3-prong conversion, rewire the power supply. We still got the old death cap in there. So that'll come out. Remove this switch will stay as the power switch, but it will no longer be a polarity reversal. And I'll probably, let me feel here. Yeah, so one of the cool things on most Standels is you got that little grommet over here where the output transformer ties to the speaker whip. And what you can typically do is just, the hole's the right size, you can drop in a 1/4-inch jack, and then ta-da, you've got the ability to use different caps. Let's flip it over real quick. Let me look at these transformers. So this one does have the original, or what I would call the first hybrid power transformer, where it's powering the plates with a voltage doubler, then the screen circuit, the filaments. Sorry about that. Had a customer drop in. Where was I at? So this power transformer, it does everything that the amp needs except for the low voltage windings for the preamps, which is what this little guy is for. So my suspicion is that this may have been used in even some of the purely tube Standels. I don't know that. That'd be a question for Owen, with the current owner of Standel. And the output transformer is a little mysterious. It does not appear that any other transformer has been installed here. It definitely does not look like the transformer that is in the 32J, which, again, I'd have to ask Owen because he's the owner of that one. Yeah, I think that it's physically smaller, so this may be a slightly higher wattage transformer. I don't know, though. I'll have to look up the codes and see if they can tell me anything. Then do some measuring on it, too. But yeah, that'll be part of my work on this, is documenting everything about it. So I'll measure the output transformer, determine the turns ratio, as well as physical size. I'll do all the same kind of measurements for the power transformer. And by the way, if you ever have a hybrid and the power transformer goes out, I have had one of these custom made by Hayboer. So they are able to make that. These are probably aftermarket. I don't know. They ain't hurt nothing though. Is there anything else we need to look at? Well, I'm going to get to it. If y'all have any questions about Standels, you know, feel free to ask. I'll do my best to at least make up an answer. And as always, go check out the modern Standel company, because they're making really well-made amps, really great sounding stuff, much of which is based on a lot of these original designs. They even do a modern version of a hybrid with 6L6, I believe, output, and then a germanium preamp in it. All right, we'll catch up with you later.